Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com for free premium sports picks. Look us up in the sports section on Roku. We're there, Dwyer Boxing and Sports News. Note that we're also on TuneIn and we're also on now iTunes. Just look up Dwyer Boxing News, one word. We're in the podcast section. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now understand that in addition to making great men's suits and historically great music, another British cottage industry appears to be getting hurt while preparing for fights against Tyson Fury. Right? Tyson Fury needs to start calling himself the man challengers get hurt to avoid. If you haven't heard, Dereck Chisora hurt his hand. We're hearing about a broken bone, but this is boxing. Who knows what the real injury is, right? But Dereck Chisora hurt his hand, and so Chisora will not proceed with his fight against Tyson Fury. Now, Tyson Fury is the man who would be king. He wants to be right the head of the castle in the United Kingdom. He signed a contract to fight David Haye. David Haye backed out. He had a bad back. Now you have Dereck Chisora backing out with a bad hand. Simply put, Tyson Fury is having a hard time finding heavyweights to fight in the United Kingdom. He clearly wants to be the best in his country. He's already fought and beaten Dereck Chisora, right? He signed up for Mr. Haye, the former heavyweight champion of the world. Neither Haye nor Chisora followed through with their fight. He's been campaigning to fight Vladimir Klitschko, who himself is fighting Kubrat Pulev. So right now, Tyson Fury has been sidelined, right? This is the hurt business. Sometimes opponents get hurt before fights. He's just had a string of bad luck. He can't get in the ring. Fans need to realize that boxing is a fighter's livelihood, right? He's not fighting. He's not earning money in the ring. He's not setting himself up for future big fights. He has a problem, right? Understand, the way boxing's set up right now, right, one of the belts is off limits. The WBC belt, held by Dwyer, is really going to be volleyed about by 4 fighters, right? Dwyer is fighting Deontay Wilder for that belt, right? He's going to try to defend his title. Now, the winner of that fight gets the winner of Bryant Jennings against Mike Perez. Now, what that means is that all 4 of those guys are off Tyson Fury's dance card. Also, Tyson Fury, no matter how much he yells, no matter how much he screams, he's not going to be fighting for the WBC title anytime soon. Nor is he going to be fighting for the titles held by Vladimir Klitschko anytime soon, because Klitschko in a few months' time is set to fight Kubrat Pulev. You know the way fighters do it. He's going to fight Pulev, and then he's going to say, hey, let me think about my life. Let me think about my career. He probably won't be back in the ring for another, what, 5 to 6 months. Now, Tyson Fury already is rusty. He already hasn't been in the ring for quite some time. If he's rusty now, imagine how he's going to be in 5 or 6 months. God forbid. If the Kubrat Pulev-Klitschko fight is close, I don't think it will be. I like Klitschko in that one. But if it's close, then you might have a Floyd Mayweather-Marcus Maidana situation, where there's an outcry, allegedly, and the guys decide to do it again. That would take Klitschko out of commission for another year. right? Because if Klitschko were to win the rematch, then he would take, what, another 5 or 6 months off? Right? If you think Fury is rusty now, imagine where he'll be then. And keep in mind, at that moment in time, understand that Klitschko, who already has his promotional company promoting the WBC title fight that he's not involved in, right? Klitschko may instead prefer to fight in a unification match rather than fight Tyson Fury, even though Fury is unbeaten. So this is a huge setback for Fury. Let's talk about two other people who Fury may have considered fighting, but who also are off the table. Commonwealth champion, Australia's best heavyweight, in my opinion, Lucas Browne. Right? Understand, Lucas Browne has his own fight coming up against Rudenko. Right? That fight's coming up. Understand the way boxing works. Let's say Fury wanted to fight Browne, because Browne does have the British Commonwealth heavyweight title. Right? If Lucas Browne, even if he dominates in his next fight, gets cut, right, has a gash that needs to heal, right, any kind of injury of any nature whatsoever could push back a possible matchup between Tyson Fury and Lucas Browne. Let's get real too. Let's say Lucas Browne has no fear of Tyson Fury. Let's say he takes care, as I think he will, of Rudenko. Right? Lucas Browne could be willing to fight Tyson Fury. If he gets tapped on the shoulder by the Vladimir Klitschko people, he might say, hey, I like Fury, but why am I fighting for anything less than the world title? Right? So Fury right now has got to be frustrated. This is really a major setback to his career. Now let's talk about this Lucas Browne, Rudenko fight. And I know I'm butchering names here. Understand that this fight is a battle between unbeatens. Lucas Browne is 20-0. Rudenko is 24-0. Now let me talk about Lucas Browne's background a little bit. You may recall in 2013 he dominated. That's the word. I'm using it deliberately. He dominated James Toney. Now somebody in the sport of boxing has to tell James Toney what I'm about to tell him here. James, you need to retire. You look terrible. Terrible. You look like a shell of yourself against Lucas Browne. Let me say this. Lucas Browne, the much bigger man, much bigger, had by far the better foot speed against James Toney. Now, James Toney never had great foot speed, but let's just say it's gotten worse over the years. Now, if you think that Lucas Browne-James Toney fight was a flash in the pan, understand that Lucas Browne then dominated Travis Walker. I know some people are going to want to talk to me about the last round of the fight. The round right before Walker decides not to come out for the next round. Understand, Walker threw what he had in that last round. I think it was the 7th round or so. Right? But just understand, Walker had tasted the canvas multiple times before then. Right? Just understand that even though Walker was a last-minute replacement, that doesn't explain how Lucas Browne was able to block his wide shots. Right? I thought Travis Walker had a problem landing clean punches against Lucas Browne. Then, of course, after that fight, Lucas Browne, who curiously seems to be under the radar for many people, right? Lucas Browne then ended the unbeaten streak of the taller Richard Towers. Right? The Towers came crumbling down in the 5th round. What I would encourage people to do in looking at that fight is to look at how Browne is successful getting inside. Look at the end of the 3rd round, how Browne telegraphs that he's going to end the fight early by severely hurting Richard Towers at the end of that 3rd round. You know the way fighters are. Towers tried to play it off. He's looking tough and stuff like that. Towers wasn't even sure at the end of the 3rd round which corner was his. When he gets back to his corner, look at the way he sits or falls into his stool. He was getting worked over by Lucas Browne. Right? Lucas Browne was getting inside. Towers seemed to be trying to frame a right hand, and Lucas Browne was unafraid of it to the point where he was throwing his left hand. Right? His left hand wasn't pinned to the side of his head, worried about what Richard Towers was going to do. Rather, he had his own job to do. Right? So Lucas Browne has beaten some quality guys. Right? Some very quality guys. I can't say the same thing for Rudenko. I believe this 24-0 record with 16 KOs and this 64% KO percentage is inflated. First, you heard me talk about Tyson Fury being rusty. Rudenko hasn't fought in over a year. His last fight was in March of 2013. Did you know that his last 3 opponents all had losses in the matches that they had right before fighting Rudenko? Did you know that unlike Lucas Browne, who went the distance with James Toney and beat him, did you know that Rudenko has never gone past the 8th round? Think about this too. You know, Lucas Browne is an Australian who has traveled the world in fighting guys, right? He fought Richard Towers, I believe, in Towers' backyard. Rudenko, by contrast, has fought all of his fights in the Ukraine. Now, I've looked at a couple of Rudenko fights. They're hard to find, right? He fought a guy in 2009, Rustamov, right? He was right in front of him, right? Rudenko didn't have a lot of lateral movement. He was front foot heavy. After the 1st round, in my opinion, he didn't have a lot of defense, right? He leans his head a bit in the 1st round, but then after that, even the lean is gone. It looks like he's trying to load up to throw a right hand. In my opinion, the world has to stand still for him to do so. Movement throws him off. If you want to see, and I'm just going to be blunt here, because if we're talking about sports betting, we've got to be blunt. If you want to see really next to no defense, take a look at Rudenko against a fighter named Raymond Ochieng. Right? Now, these 2 guys seem to be competing hard on who had less defense in this fight. Right? It just looked like a barroom brawl. Didn't look like elite fighting. It just looked like a barroom brawl. He ends up catching Ochieng, right? Ochieng gets hurt, can't recover. It's relatively an early knockout. But my point to you is this. Had you heard of Rustamov or Raymond Ochieng before this video or this audio now that I'm on iTunes? Right? Rudenko is fighting unknowns. He's fighting them in his backyard. That explains his 24-0 record. I don't believe he would have this record if he were fighting the Richard Towerses or the James Toneys or the Travis Walkers of the world. I think Lucas Browne is a step up in competition. I like Lucas Browne to beat Andre Rudenko. I believe Rudenko only has a puncher's chance in the fight. I'm expecting Browne to dominate. Then I'm expecting Browne, who has been calling out Tyson Fury. I'm expecting Browne to either fight Fury or to try to get a bigger fight against Vladimir Klitschko. Right? If you're Vladimir Klitschko, quite frankly, all roads lead through you. Right? The WBC guys eventually are going to knock on your front door and say, hey, we want to fight you. Right? Certainly Lucas Browne and Tyson Fury would drop what they're doing for the chance to fight Vladimir Klitschko. We'll talk about Vladimir Klitschko against Kubrat Pulev in another video, but just understand, Tyson Fury suffered a huge setback when Dereck Chisora broke his hand. Understand, that's the kind of injury that would prevent Chisora from training for a Fury fight. So if these two guys were to eventually fight, it would necessarily be several months from now. At a certain point, the public is going to have fatigue. They're going to say, man, haven't we heard about these two guys in the ring for too long a period of time? Don't be surprised if that fight doesn't fall apart altogether. Right? In the old days, a fighter like Tyson Fury, quite frankly, would buy ringside seats and would show up to the WBC tournament and would try to call out the winner of those fights. But just to understand, the problem with the tournament is, let's say he shows up and he calls out Bermane Stiverne. Right? Stiverne would have to tell him, hey, you know what? I actually am contractually obligated to fight the winner of Jennings against Perez. Right? That's, of course, assuming Stiverne gets by Deontay Wilder. And understand, Wilder is an unbeaten fighter who no one has gone the distance against. Right? So, the downside of tournaments is that it excludes fighters. Tyson Fury right now is being excluded from the WBC heavyweight title. Unfortunately, because of the injury to Dereck Chisora and the injury/temporary retirement of David Haye, Tyson Fury is running out of dance partners. Lucas Browne would be an intriguing dance partner. Very intriguing. The problem, of course, is, will Lucas Browne instead decide that he wants to fight heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko? Right? Frankly, Klitschko might even be thinking, if there's a time to fight Tyson Fury, and I believe Tyson Fury would give Klitschko all he can handle, if there's a time to fight Tyson Fury, maybe that time is now, when Tyson Fury, at least theoretically, is rusty. Right? The question, of course, is whether that'll be the most lucrative fight at the time. If Lucas Browne destroys Andre Rudenko, right, he might leapfrog Tyson Fury in the race to fight heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.